Feels like it's been a complete morning already. I can't believe I'm back up here. Um, but I did promise some words, and what's been really um, moving deeply in me is this might be a little close. Is a contemplation around the theme of nonviolence, especially in the um, context of our current political moment, and it's been an inquiry for me that's been sort of percolating now for um, yeah, many months. And so this is actually the first time that I'm sharing some of this inquiry in the form of a Dharma talk. So thank you for humoring me, and I hope that there will be some time also for some conversation and um, afterwards, dialogue afterwards. But I thought I would start with a poem, and this is Rosemary Watola Traumer, and it just she just published it this last week. The title is "The Same Day the Military Leader Said, 'We will respond with force.' There was a moment in sun-dappled woods when I felt held by the peace that blooms in the lungs, then spreads to limbs, to mind, the peace that comes when I turn toward the throbbing ache of hate and war, and don't pretend pain isn't here, and don't deny beauty either. Amidst the peace of the quiet woods, I wanted more peace that spreads from woods to breath. More peace, as if peace could be shared like cake or bread or shelter or song. I wanted to share it everywhere. More peace that makes the mind a glade with gentle light and ample shade. How could I not want peace to spread to war-torn homes in war-torn lands, to war-torn hearts and war-torn hands? So deep the peace of the sun-dappled woods, and still I wish for more. So is this a little echoey, JJ? Is it too close to my lips? I mean, maybe. Okay. So these thoughts on nonviolence, but also the symmetry there of peacemaking, and to start with this practice, which so fundamentally is a practice of peace, a practice of cultivating peacefulness, of cultivating nonviolence in the heart and mind. And in very simple terms, starting with sati, with this quality, this practice of mindfulness, as the definition, one definition of sati in the Buddhist teachings is mindfulness or heartfulness. And this practice of coming back again and again to what's happening in the present moment with a quality of just genuine acceptance. I mean, it's quite profound, actually, the simplicity that this practice asks of us, the simple nature of it, and yet how not easy it is to continue to attend to the moment with that open, non-judgmental, friendly, kind attention. I was sort of pointing to that, maybe just very subtly in the guided practice, how easy it can even be to have an idea about meditation. A good meditation means that I'm with the breath, 45 minutes on the breath. And if the attention veers and goes into, planning the next meal, that there can be a sort of yanking of the attention back. There's a subtle violence there of bringing it back, not there, here. And actually, what we're asked to do in this practice is maintain this sense of real peacefulness, of cultivating nonviolence, of noticing that, and then allowing the present moment to fill in the attention, to really land here, not in a way that's yanking and dividing our attention, but making it whole, and making us whole and available for all elements of our experience. So there's this way that I like very much see what we're doing on the cushion and in practice as an internal practice of peacemaking. And the not easy nature of it, there's so many long retreats that I sit, and there can be just times of such challenge in my own heart and mind. And I'll look around at the room at the Sangha sometimes, and I'll just think, oh my gosh, you're all doing it. We're all doing it. Like, it's not easy practice. It's not. It's very confronting to be here for our whole experience and be open-hearted. It's very confronting. And I teach with Gil Fronsdal and others an eco-chaplaincy training program. And one of the prerequisites for the program is that we ask people to have sat silent meditation retreat. And one of the reasons for that is because as a chaplain, we're being asked to attend to suffering in the world. And we know that a retreat practice, you're forced to sit with your own suffering and to tenderize the heart in that way. That we have to be close to it, that we have to be open to this whole range of emotion, and we're not pushing any of it away. And that's asking a lot of this heart. And it's the most liberating thing for this heart to know that it has the capacity to be with the full range of experience, but it's not easy. This peacemaking is not easy, I think, is what I'm pointing to. There was a time when I was teaching environmental studies as a college professor, and I was kind of doing the conventional like syllabus for a while, where you basically each week is like we talk about another environmental problem, and then maybe the last week is like reasons for hope. And and it was I was a walking commuter at that time, and I would walk home every day, and I would just feel so discouraged and depressed and hopeless. And I knew from the look of the faces of my students that was happening too, and this kind of increasing like cynicism in the room and kind of numbness and guardedness that was starting to be sort of the affect in my classroom. And I remember thinking, like, this is not working. Like, this is not the kind of educational container that is good for the heart, body, the mind, the engaged person, young person. And it was around then that I actually started to train with Joanna Macy, who some of you probably know. She does a lot of, she's still doing some of it. She's an elder in the field of Buddhist eco dharma, and have put together this whole exquisite list of practices called the work that reconnects, that really helps us to be with the suffering in the world in a way that metabolizes it through the system, and then to the point where we're engaging, where we're responsive to the suffering in the world. And so I encountered her and her work, and the crux of her work is, how can we open to this full range of experience, of emotional experience. And how does that actually liberate us and become empowering and become this source from which we connect with one another and recognize how we're connected. So I started bringing those practices into my classrooms, and it transformed everything. Just to allow space for grief and despair and anger, to be real with some of that. I was talking to a colleague, an academic colleague recently, who was a big part of the ACT UP movement in Chicago in the 80s. And she said that, like, such a phenomenal social movement, amazing social movement. And she said that one of the reasons she thought that it dissolved, that really fell apart, was because there was no room for despair in the movement. There was room for anger. That was kind of the normative emotion, but not despair. So I say all of this because this practice like opens up our capacity to be with all of these emotions, which we spend so much time and energy oftentimes just guarding ourselves from having. And not just emotion, but all other kinds of experiences, even thoughts and other forms of relationship with ourselves and others. And this practice is telling us, is teaching us that we can be with it, we can open to it, that nothing is left out. And it also means in that way, we're not creating separation within ourselves. We're not betraying ourselves. We're not abandoning ourselves. We're actually here for ourselves. And likewise, it's teaching us that we're actually not separate from one another. There's the separation in ourselves and the separation from each other. And, Dan was saying that I just taught a nature retreat, and I did. He was right. And, and, one of the things that becomes one of the reasons I love teaching retreat in nature is because we get so intimate with the way in which we're completely bound up in the ecological processes that govern the world. That not that we don't have that availability and access here in this building, of course, but there's something about teaching around these themes of interdependence and really knowing, seeing, feeling how this breath is completely contingent upon the photosynthesizing plants around us. That the water we drink is coming from the spring that we're sitting upon. The ways in which I like to really sort of reinforce or remember that not only are we knowing and getting to know the sort of dynamic movement and beings of the non-human and the more than human world, but we're being known too. That we're actually in these dynamic relationships, and that this way that we all, the Buddhist teachings, they over and over again in the teaching of dependent origination, we learn, we know, we begin to understand from the inside that we're all leaning on each other. There's no separate self here. There's interbeing, as Thich Nhat Hanh would point to, the sense of interbeing. And so when we start to really know that from the inside through these wisdom teachings, then we also heal these separations between each other. So this practice, this potential of peacemaking, both within this being and then within our world. it's, you know, we have these incredible technologies now that hook us up to everyone at all times. I don't know who I'm actually talking to online right now, where you all are, but maybe, maybe Hawaii, maybe the East Coast, maybe a different country. And it's like truly remarkable. And, um, these research studies are showing that people have never felt more isolated and alone. And so this work we do together, this opening of the heart mind, it has this capacity to heal that sense of isolation and really know, again, I keep saying, like, from the inside, like, no, not, because we can know things, but to like feel it, to have that felt sense of belonging, um, it's actually, I consider it subversive, because so many of our systems, they reinforce these kinds of themes of scarcity, of separation, of powerlessness, and so our meditation practice subverts this. And I say meditation, but I think I mean that in a very broad way, like this practice of presence, this practice of being present for our lives, of being in attunement, of intimate, of alive. And then this formal practice of meditation is what helps us refine that, because the mind, as all of you I'm sure have now noticed, is kind of conditioned to not really stay in the present moment. So we practice that, become more available for our experience. So this is actually from one of our current Eco Chaplains participants. This is Nikayla Jefferson, and she was part of the Sunrise Movement. I think she still is, actually. And she just wrote a piece that was published on One Earth Sanga's website. Sorry about the puffing. I might end up reading the whole thing. I wasn't sure. It's just it was, okay. So this is Nikayla. Recently, I've noticed how much of the wars out there live in here. The latest breaking news headline activates a vengeful fantasy featuring the unending suffering of my enemy. I pass by someone I perceive to be a member of the enemy camp and focus my eyes on anything but them. A chill passes over my heart. I bristle at their nearness. I cast out the enemy parts of me, beat them back as they enter my awareness, and denying them understanding or compassion. If I wait for a wave of peace to miraculously wash over the world, I'll die waiting and then wait a lifetime again. An empowering question arises. How can I be the wave of peace myself right now? For me, it begins by asking, who else, what else am I fighting right now? How might I work towards a more peaceful relationship with those I consider my enemy? What might an authentic process of acceptance, forgiveness, and letting go look like with the objects of my anger and hatred for the sake of my own state of mind? So this practice, for this practice, what she writes here, of acceptance, forgiveness, letting go, for the sake of her own state of mind. And so there's this two-part here that I want to name. One is that we do that this practice brings that kind of steadiness, that kind of clearing of violence from our own minds and hearts. It unfolds naturally. just the natural unfolding of being present, of being intimate for our experience and open to it. And we also know that, well, maybe some of us more steeped in the Buddha Dharma know that sila, this practice of ethics, of morality, is actually central to the Buddha's teachings, this practice of ahimsa, of non-harming. And the Buddha actually lined up on equal footing dana, which was spoken to, generosity, sila, this integrity, moral integrity, samadhi, which is our meditation practice, and panna, which is wisdom, insight. You know, there's no hierarchy there among any of those themes or any of those practices or whatever word you want to use to describe those. So one of the reasons that moral integrity was so has been so emphasized in the teachings is because it brings us that steadiness of the mind and heart. You know, if we are engaging in acts that cause harm, it's really hard to keep the mind and heart steady. It's like we get silent and the mind gets really busy with the scrambling of trying to be okay, like be a good person, not feel guilty, not feel upset, not get tangled in that. It's just, it's what happens when we get quiet, is that we start to become very sensitive to the ways that we have caused harm or will cause harm or do cause harm. And actually that's a beautiful thing. Like what I love about the way in which the Buddha spoke to sila, to these teachings, was that there was nothing punitive. Like the precepts are practices. They're given to take on as practices. And when he would teach his son Rahula about the practice, he would one of his first teachings was to say, you know, if you're going to do something, think about, is it going to cause harm? Or is it going to, you know, be for the welfare of others? And if it's for the welfare of others, then go ahead. And in the middle of doing it, ask yourself that question again. And if it's all good, keep going. And afterwards, like review. And like, was it good? If not, you learn from that. It's not like then you're a bad person. You know, it's just you learn from that. And we learn from that. Like we get quiet, we start to become more present. It's like, oh, that had an impact, you know, maybe that there was harm to myself. Maybe there was harm to another. You know, we just become more sensitive. But these practices of sila, they keep the mind more steady. They keep the mind more peaceful. They keep the mind more inclined to nonviolence, to peacefulness. And, you know, at some point, we start by following these precepts of non-harming, of non-stealing, of speaking honestly. And then it's like we just embody them because it feels good, you know, because it brings harmony within our own selves and within our communities. And that's so much of, I think, you know, what Nikayla, her wisdom here, you know, that that nonviolence is really recognizing that the quality of our life is the same as the quality of our state of mind. You know, that to really embody that, like I've attributed this to Gandhi, but it might be one of those misquotes where he would say that being resentful is like drinking poison and watching and waiting for your enemy to die. You know, that it's this how do we really honor, you know, our own heart and mind and know that that is actually what then we become to embody in our lives. in the world and in our communities. I couldn't get away with giving a talk on nonviolence and not reading this quotation from the Dhammapada. Um, hatred is never appeased by hatred in this world. By non-hatred alone is hatred appeased. This is a law eternal. And so it's also really important to name that nonviolence is not non-action. Really important to name that. And just in the same way that equanimity can be misunderstood as indifference, this kind of, it doesn't matter, it's all good. That's not true equanimity. Equanimity is a Brahma Vihara. It's an abode of the heart. It's a quality of heartfulness that actually cares deeply, but it rests in the wisdom of knowing that things are as they are right now. And so similarly, this quality of peacefulness and nonviolence is not an acquiescence. It's not passivity. It's not indifference. It's knowing that, if we are committed to living a life of harmony and peace, then we wouldn't ever permit another to perpetrate harm, to interfere with that capacity for peacefulness. It's like, I think about it sometimes as, if you see a young child running into traffic, right? It's like your whole heart, your whole being is like, pull that child away, and maybe you'll even scold them, because it's like, you want them to be well. And it comes from that same caring. It's a caring of the heart that actually engages with the world. There's one of the ways in which Thich Nhat Hanh, he has these mindfulness trainings, which are the precepts. And he wrote for one of them, for non-harming, aware of the suffering caused by the destruction of life, I am committed to cultivating compassion and learning ways to protect the lives of people, animals, plants, and minerals. And I love this because there's a real active engagement here of this precept, of this mindfulness training. Aware of suffering, I'm committed to cultivating compassion and learning ways to protect the lives of others. So this nonviolence as this expression of love. And likewise, the Buddhist principle of right or wise speech, described by the Buddha as very active. Wise speech doesn't mean no speech unless we're on a silent retreat. Then it's noble silence. But when we're in the world, thus do they live as one who binds together those who are divided, a peacemaker, a lover of peace, a speaker of words that make for peace. Like very active, a peacemaker, a speaker of words that make for peace. And I've been doing a real deep dive in the work of Mickey Cashton these days, who is a nonviolent communication and she actually runs the Center for Nonviolence, a teacher. And this is her description of nonviolence. And again, just pointing to the active nature of this. Nonviolence is an orientation of care for the largest whole we can imagine. And with the infinite willingness I spoke of earlier, means doing what is ours to do in response to emergent needs, stepping up our mobilization even when others don't mobilize, even if resources are not sufficient, even if we are tired, because we care. I just love that. An orientation of care for the largest whole we can imagine. So these pieces, just wanting to name them again, the nonviolence that we cultivate here in this practice, and the way in which that is engaged with, is manifest in this world, and that the creativity and the variety, I mean, who knows how that emerges in each one of us? Who knows? I was reflecting as I was thinking about this talk on Vedran Smalovic, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but maybe some of you know of him as the cellist of Sarajevo. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. So during the siege of Sarajevo, he would play his cello in these like bombed out areas. And there was like I think it was a 21-day mortar round in this village square in Sarajevo that killed a number of citizens. And after that, he played his cello for 21 days straight in this square. And it was a very, courageous act to just play his cello, and this like incredible act of nonviolence and care, and made such a statement. I mean, he was known around the world, and it gave hope and beauty and magic to people who were close to him and far away. But just what an incredible manifestation of that caring heart, and who knows, again, like we bring ourselves into this practice, and our hearts and minds, they get tenderized and alchemized, and we get opened, and we get moved, and we get touched. And how does that unfold for us? It's the creativity of this practice. And just to say a couple of other things, one is to really emphasize a practice, the word practice, to just say, like I was mentioning earlier, that it takes a commitment to show up for our lives and to show up for each other. And Thich Nhat Hanh again would use this metaphor of watering seeds, because we all have these seeds of anger and violence and compassion and integrity and harmony and confusion. And what are we choosing to water? And coming here together is a way of really choosing to water, those seeds of openness, of care, of mindfulness, this heartfulness. And then it's less likely then that we respond with violence in the world. We can get reactive, of course, but we start to become more sensitive to how that feels within us when we have that contraction inside. It's unpleasant. So I'll just kind of close with one more example. And this example is pointing to this theme that I think kind of I'm speaking to without saying it out loud, but I think it's love. And in our first eco chaplaincy training, this was a number of years ago, we would all meet together. There were about 20 of us at that time in the training. And I think on our fourth in-person retreat, it was about the time when we had gone through the bonding stages bonding. I don't remember all those group stages. There's like the storming, the forming, the right. So we were in storming phase, but we had gotten pretty close at that time, by that time. And there's a big conflict that erupted in the space, and a lot of anger and confusion. And we were all in a group together in a kind of like a meditation hall like this. And one of our participants was a nonviolent communication teacher and a mediator. She actually works closely with Mickey Cashton, and she grabbed a microphone, which we had lying around, and she started to mediate. And at one point, she was doing like such a brilliant job. But at one point, she stops and she says, if any of you believe that there's a right or a wrong right now, you are not coming from a place of love. And I remember hearing those words and I was like, huh, you know? And I checked it out. I checked it out in my own system. You know, does that feel true? And I suggest that the next time you're in a conflict, you check that out. Like if you're committed to a right or a wrong right now, check and see if you're coming from a place of love. Because for me, I realized, and I have subsequently realized, that's right for me. No, that's actually right. And I would say, like, this practice is so much about coming from a place of love. And it can be a fierce love and a compassionate love and a strong love. But that's really what, nonviolence is too, what peacemaking is, what it requires, and what this world requires of us. I think our survival is contingent upon it, actually. So there were these two quotations. I was going to choose one of them, but I'm going to read them both, and I'll end there so that we have time for some dialogue. One is Bell Hooks, who wrote, "The moment we choose to love, we begin to move against domination, against oppression. The moment we choose to love, we begin to move towards freedom, to act in ways that liberate ourselves and others." And then this is Adrienne Maree Brown. "And along the way, we have to learn with grace to let go of the parts of ourselves that were socialized by oppressive systems of unjust power. As those harmful patterns and behaviors become markers of our past selves, we become more curious, more complex, and more compatible with the future. Ultimately, I believe we have to let go of anything that isn't love." So thank you so much for your kind attention.